What's going on, creators? Yeah, I just want to get on here and bring everybody back to now. Appreciate y'all being here and vibing with me for a bit. Yeah, today I'd like to talk a little bit about the energy game and how you can start to protect your energy, not becoming psychically drained all the time, not to become triggered and reactive, simultaneously letting your life force energy just dwindle and dwindle and dwindle as you're attacking people in your mind, having grievance thoughts in your mind, feeling like a victim. You know, all of these types of things are really correlated to the old mindset of like the cursed identity. It's all based on an identity and law of assumption proposed by like Neville Goddard, for example, but also biblically, just in the teachings of Jesus. It's important to put on the new man, the new identity, and that's who you are in Christ, who God created you to be. You're not a victim. You're not a fearful reactor, but a powerful creator. And it's important to really start stepping into your power and your strength. And a lot of the stuff I hear amongst like the manifesting community, a lot of it has to do with, it feels like to me, just trying to soothe weakness and trying to like mentally masturbate out of difficult situations and circumstances, instead of using these different things that emerge in the present moment as fuel to grow, to strengthen, to evolve your identity, your sense of self, as one that's not just cowering to every problem or afraid of being speaking your mind, not allowing yourself to go, I don't want to say nothing about that because I don't want to rock the boat and I don't want to trigger people and I don't want to be offensive. Well, there's a time and place for everything. And it's one thing, if you're trying to just like go from point A to point B in a public situation and you're just like, I'm just not going to even have drama with this psycho. That's one thing, but it's another when it's in your household, in your business, in your all these different areas that are actually in your position as a leader, for example, or like a creator, for example, to do something about it. Just sitting there just in imagining, trying never to actually deal with anything, I feel like is a stumbling block and kind of counterproductive. I think it's important, when you look at creation, to accept what is on some level, so then you can actually have the power to do something about it. So many times I hear people almost in these delusions where they just like, well, I want the world to be something that it's not, or it's like, I just want there not to be all these pendulums that suck energy all the time, or I just want there not to be this demonic element that's just trying to, suck the life out of people, and so much of that whole area of creation is due to a manifestation of the cursed identity. All of those types of egregores and these types of energy-sucking things, I hear the people out there, oh, Mike, you're supposed to battle against the, principalities and powers and wickedness in high places and all these types of things. And people will point to the external demonstration, the manifestation, and be like, those are the bad men. Those are the bad guys. Those are the ones that we need to attack and have grievances about and feed our energy to. And it's like, that's exactly what they want. It's exactly what feeds the energy to continue to perpetuate that beast system onto others, is the people unwittingly feeding it with their life force energy. And so it's like, it's important to realize when you're doing that, whenever you're reacting out of fear and anger and shame and guilt and all these like low vibe kinds of states of consciousness, you're actually unconsciously feeding what you don't want to happen. And then, just by that simple act of feeding it, well, then it's pressed down, multiplied, comes back to you through the mirror of reality as a bigger egregore, as a bigger hill to climb, as a bigger pedestal. All of these kinds of things that people unconsciously drift into, and then they point out these limiting beliefs that have manifested into form and go, well, if it wasn't for that asshole over there, then I could be happy. Well, if it wasn't for the government over here, then I could be happy. But, taking things a little bit of a step back and realizing, hey, what you're actually battling and resisting is just your imaginings about a pretty much neutral thing. If you take a far enough step back, not to say it's okay that people are bullies and like attacking other people and victimizing and preying on other people. That's not what I'm talking about. But, it's like, yeah, there's corruption and there's stuff like that. But, a lot of times people will just point at the alternative political party, for example. If they're a conservative, they point their finger at the liberal and go, well, they're the democrat, they're the bad one, they're the bad guy. I'm the good, morally pure, whatever, and I'm on this pedestal. You're guilty, therefore you should be punished. Therefore I'm right. Therefore you're wrong. And then you start seeing this circle jerk start to emerge. But that same kind of circle jerk exists everywhere in creation, in the unconscious kind of cursed mindset of separation, not seeing the unity of everything, seeing how there's this correspondence between your mental activity and your state of mind to your actual demonstration into physical reality. It all starts in mind. And so many of the unenlightened, or just the people that are just unconscious, they point at the bridges as incidents and go, well, he's just so lucky that these things happen. Not realizing how magical creation is, how you can use imagining to, for one, impress into the field of awareness. But as you kind of just realize that's what you're doing in the present moment, you're either planting these blessings or curses into awareness, into the field. Think of it as like a field of corn or something. It doesn't care if you're, planting curses, something to battle against, what you don't want ultimately. Fear, hysteria, jealousy, envy, all these attributes of feeling separate from whatever, these desirings, which are saying I'm lacking. Well, if you're constantly in lack and planting seeds of lack, don't be surprised then when awareness then, through just like a garden, grows into what you're trying to achieve is maybe more abundance. But if you're just lack, the physical demonstration of abundance will be choked, filled with all these weeds, all this bullshit, all this guilt and drama and inharmonious situations. It's all reflective of consciousness. And so using that as the kind of the palette, though, you're able to go, okay, well, that manifested in a total shit show. How is my mindset, how is my beliefs playing a role into this? Take ownership, take responsibility. Because, if you're not doing that, then you're feeding egregores, you're feeding the demonic, you're feeding these pedestal things to rule over you, even though you're the one that's feeding it the energy to do so, and so it's like, and a lot of times it's a self-destructing thing. It's what you don't want over and over again, like a hell almost. It's draining your energy. It's totally inharmonious with this inner vision of like a heaven on earth situation. It's the exact opposite. Well, at those moments, it's important to forgive. And what I mean by forgive, it's like you can see where things are missing the mark. It's important to kind of like biblically look at like the concept of sinning as like missing the mark, in the sense that you're not achieving the goal. If your goal is to be demonstrating like the fruits of the Spirit, one of which maybe is abundance, and you keep falling short and you're just demonstrating more and more scarcity, then that's the issue. That's the problem. If your goal is abundance, your goal is to be in harmony with what God said is your natural inheritance as being blessed child of God that you are. Well, the problem is you don't believe it, for one. For two, the secondary problem is maybe there's some guilt. You don't feel worthy of like good things. You don't feel like any type of like gratitude. It's always just a means to an end. A means to like, I just need this external demonstration so I can feel a certain way. When that's exactly opposite. It's like you feel a certain way and then it manifests, through a bridge of incidents that you don't even really know the how. So sitting there trying to imagine how it's going to happen or how you would feel, it's like a lot of that imagining and shit can be a trick and a trap if you never take action. It's like through the action that you're actually building a lot of your new faith, because you already have faith. A lot of people just have faith in evil and faith in like the undesirable constantly happening, and faith in like, drama, faith in like the opposite of what they want. They feel like, because then that manifests over and over again and they keep doubling down on it like the world does. It's easy to see it like with COVID, for example. It's like, well, first we're going to go down this wrong road. And instead of like backtracking, course correcting, taking on new evidence and like evaluating the situation, it's like, it's this vaccine or nothing. It's like, but I already had COVID and I'm healthy, and it's like really not even shut the fuck up and take this thing. It's like, what are you doing? You're being so selfish. You're being so, that kind of drama, and it's just like, what are you talking about, you lunatic? But like the thing of it is like, when people keep doubling down on the fear and what they don't want, it's having it's using the one and only power as a curse instead of as a blessing. And so, you can sit there and you can judge people for doing that. You can be upset that they're doing that, or you can just accept, like, okay, a third of the population is just under the automaton fear energy sucking system. It's like, yeah, it would be great if they changed their mind and stopped feeding it their energy, but you can start to realize, though, too, how the energy game is actually kind of working, because in love you're growing energy. It's like you're giving and receiving at the same time. It's like everything's an investment. It's like the world has a misconception that when you give, you lose. It's like if I give you $100, it's like the world would be like, well, you sacrificed $100, it's gone forever. You're diminished because you did that. You're lesser, and so they look at that as like a sacrifice, an example of scarcity. But metaphysically, when you realize we're all one, we're all connected, and what you give, you receive, and to start moving in a new state of consciousness, it takes taking what is already manifesting it and growing it. The main way you start growing it is you start to give it more attention and energy and focus, and moving in a direction of who would you be if this was already not a problem. You embody the end, not the middle. It's like, well, for one, if you were super abundant, you wouldn't even be thinking in terms of scarcity like this. You wouldn't be sweating that you just spent $50 on some random person, or you gave like $20 to just some person for like a charity thing or something. It's like you wouldn't be, oh, like, am I ever going to get that back? No. Instead, if you put on who you are in Christ and you realize it's an investment, it's like, oh, this is seed money. I'm going to get 10 times the return. On that $20, I'm getting 200. Thank you, God, for giving me that and being my source for income and abundance and all of the good gifts of life. Thanks for letting me showcase that by flexing my abundance. It's just a different way of thinking about the same event. It's like, some person gives $20, they feel like it's a lost sacrifice, they feel guilty, they feel like they're never going to get it back, they feel diminished. Meanwhile, you could have the exact same event giving $20, and a different mindset all of a sudden is empowering, it's exciting, you're expecting like a return of like a tenfold return. Who knows how it'll manifest? Maybe, someone watching this will be like, got you, I get it, boom, something like that. Or totally different situation, maybe just through music, someone will license a track off me, maybe I'll get some back royalties of something that happened 6 months ago or a year ago that it's now confronting. Maybe I'll get an inheritance. Maybe some person was really inspired for the years that I've been doing these, and they're just like, what, this guy needs a fishing boat, and I don't have any family that's ever made me feel any type of way. Give everything to this random person. Who knows? It's like all of these different ways, and actually by trying to like figure out the how, you're limiting infinite intelligence that has infinite ways that we don't even know. And so it's letting go of like, I need to control, I need to manipulate, I need to worry about it, to whatever's unfolding in the present moment is perfectly unfolding. It's something for me to steward. And by steward, I mean I'm going to either grow it, I'm going to take good care of it, I'm going to show a lot of love and attention to it. And it's not about making it hard and complicated and convoluted. So it's like, oh, well, I got maybe a gig to play guitar for one song in front of a small crowd. Okay, well, stewarding would be like, I'm going to make sure I know how to play the song. I know, I'm going to make sure I get there early for sound check. I'm going to do an awesome job so I can serve this crowd something that they appreciate, that they resonate with, that they enjoy, that's a blessing to them. It's about getting out of that service to just the ego versus service to the larger collective. And in that, you actually are servicing yourself because you reap the benefits of doing that with that change of mindset. I know from personal experience through my business, my handyman business, for example, I was like in this boat where I was like, I didn't give a shit about like money because I was just like, oh, it's such a Ponzi scheme. It's just created out of nothing. So it's like, what is, it's like, why would I think that this is wealth? Just having just this fiat currency. Through a bunch of like spiritual understanding and everything, though, it's like I've come to be less triggered by it. I've been able to see the blessing that's involved in it, and seeing how it flows like an energy, and how it's like it's it's the result of like servicing others when you change your mindset. And so it's like before, I had a lot of like triggers about like guilt, feeling unworthy of it, because like I was surrounded by people that were like basically slaves to other people, that were just like grinding all the time and having nothing to show for it. So I almost felt guilty that it was coming so easily. I was doing things that I enjoyed doing. And so there's like a guilt. There's this like weird complex that started happening. So I started rejecting it. But then there's also the truth element that I was like really involved with, like looking at it like, well, don't you know that that's created by nothing? Oh, don't you know that's owned by a bunch of a cartel that's just like trying to. And there was like all this drama, all this. But, as I've come to understand more of like the spiritual nature of things, how things are one, that it's a reflection of, and it's just about, there's a piece of paper. Again, it's the story that's behind it. And, my story was like, I'd already been down this path of like, oh, God provides or whatever. So I was like, I wasn't sweating having this like stockpile of it. So I was giving it away. I was like doing whatever with the evolving thing, where now it's like, as soon as I like shifted my business to focusing on like, how can I serve my customers better? That becomes a focus. It's like I'm focused on like manifesting, like, it's like if they hire me to paint their house, for example, it's like, how can I paint this to excel their expectation? Money is a part of it, because it's like, sometimes it's like when you go that next level above what they're expecting, it's like what you quoted me is not even enough. It's like, I'll give you, $3,000 plus another like $500. It's like, keep it. It's like, it looks awesome. You've increased the value of our place, or like a property flip type situation where you're always just trying to create art, create something that creates an energy that's a benefit for others. Music is the same thing. It's like you can be really ego focused and like, how is this going to serve me and like make me like a demigod, where like women are just like wanting to fuck me all the time, and like I got plenty of money and power, and it's like walking around with that kind of like, how is this serving me? How is this serving me? It's like, oh, I'm such a genius because I can create these little. That can make a huge stumbling block, and it's a huge stumbling block at any type of business, whether it's music, whether it's a handyman business. I had a vaporizer business for, I have all sorts of things going on, and it's a detriment every time to be focused on how it serves yourself. But, if you even start on a small scale, which is how I started with like, well, how can this make my family better? How can I use this? It's like, man, I don't give a fuck about the money, but, my wife needs, things, my kids need things, I need all these obligations and responsibilities. So it's like, I'll just take all of this money, just say I make $1,000, I'll just put it all to my family. I don't really need anything. I don't really want anything. It's just not that big of a deal. And growing into like, oh, this is a benefit for them. It's like, oh, grandkids. Oh, I can help them. I can help. And you start, focusing more on the blessings, what you can do for others. If you're like fine and content, so that makes you an excellent person to have it, because then you're not like trying to like hoard it. You're not trying to steal from others to get it. But, the more that you work on like, hey, you know what? According to the Bible, God is abundant. And God is within us according to Jesus. And so, when you take, those attributes of love, which is maybe a less triggering way to say it, those attributes are stuff that we're going to be in harmony with as we connect with who we are in Christ. So if our Creator is abundant and we are one with that abundance, we should feel abundant then too. Same thing with health. She's like, you look at the promises of God, and it's like, health being one of them. God is health and life abundant. So it's like that should be what you're experiencing more and more levels of from within as you're connecting with that spiritual relationship, as God being the source of all these good gifts. Realizing that, then it's like you don't resist them as much, you don't push them away, but you start to change your mindset in relationship to them with how your relationship is with your Creator. So it's like some people, when they get money, it's like all of a sudden they become more unconscious. It like amplifies what's already there. Metaphysically, you can look at like even like reality transurfing, which I've been on kind of a tangent on lately. But pendulums is a good transferable idea, in the sense that pendulums suck energy. Same thing can kind of happen mentally and externally. Situations can drain you. All these different things can drain you. But the more you're focused on others, there's less of a resistance barrier to push through. If you can start to change the narrative within yourself to stop focusing on how this benefits you versus others, because you could be an awesome like rock star for like others, but if you're just like stuck in this like guilt shame complex because it's actually benefiting you then too, because you're in this flow and you feel guilty because you're like not kind of the same as other people, then you can start to spiral and sabotage your own stuff, and so it's like the more that you really recognize the energy game though, the more you're like, okay, everything is one energy. Okay, if people are in fear of you, they're feeding you energy. If you're in a state of love, you're feeding out energy, but it's also coming back. But when you're in fear, it's like you're building an egregore, you're building an entity that's ultimately sucking the life out of you. Whereas when you're in love and in the blessed state, you're creating things that give energy, but then it's like an investment and it comes back to you. So you're amplifying energy, whereas like fear gives it away, and if you like look at biblically too, that's a thing about like the Bible where it triggers people when it says like fear God. It's like as you're fearing God, it's like a lot of times then that energy is like being directed back to infinite intelligence. It creates a circuit, that's the loop. And it's like people want to pretend like they don't fear God, but they do. Even atheists do. It's like most of the world does. It's not, and the thing of it is like, Mike, that's a bold claim, and it's like people fear death, and that's their God. It's like the highest ideal and idea you have. It can be considered an attribute of God. And people will say it in different language and different shit. But if it's got your attention, it's got your energy, it's got your worship, and that's what you're worshiping. A lot of people worship false idols, external things, whatevers. But like the thing of it is, it's like once you understand more and more so of the energy game, just in your own self, if you and your creator are connected, and then you have people that are hating on you and fearing you, a lot of times we can become triggered and then want to attack them or then carry grievance thoughts that then siphons our energy, where you can start to change your relationship with that dynamic and redefine that, renew your mind and a new belief of like, well, that person is attacking me because they're afraid of me. You either love or you fear. There's only two things going on. And there's really ultimately only one thing going on in infinite phases. But the thing of it is, it's like when you realize that dynamic, it makes when people are hating on you, like irrationally, for no reason other than they're projecting shit onto you, you can join the fucking low vibe and match frequencies and become drained psychically by that energy sucking pendulum. Or you can go, okay, that person is intimidated by me. They're attacking me. They have all these grievances. They're dumping on me. That I can feel that my energy is starting to get fucked with on some level. But then check your inner narrative and this inner speech. For one, if they're confessing where they're missing the mark, they're sinning or whatever, you can use that time to impress the subconscious mind with a higher ideal of them, which will then be like an investment. It's another way you can start to use energy. You can start to impress the subconscious in yourself, which is connected with the subconscious in that other person. And so, for example, like Neville Goddard gives this example a lot. If they're unemployed and they're missing the mark in that way, not being able to provide for their family, that kind of stuff, well, you can keep them in that state unconsciously, but part of it is like when they're bringing shit to you, it's an opportunity to level up your own consciousness. So you can either use the energy as an attack and lower not only your vibe but their own, because as you attack another, you're attacking yourself. So you can lose energy like that. Or you can imagine that they're gainfully employed with the best job they've ever had, most highest salary, great benefits, or perfect for them, is going to be a blessing, and just really feel that energy, how that just even as you're doing that, as you're forgiving their missing the mark, imagining for them what you would want if you were them, and kind of planting that into awareness and then dropping it, letting it go. Don't ruminate on it. Don't just sit there obsessing about whether did they get that job yet. And it's like, you don't fucking have to worry about it. It's a done deal. It's over. You planted the seed. It's over. It's done. And in God's timing, you will be then confronted with them, or you hear something about them. It's like, hey, they got that real estate job. They're really excelling. They're like selling all these properties. It's like perfect. It's like, and that's something you can test for yourself as you start to really play with the energy and the imagination. but also not getting sucked into pendulums where your energy is just going to something more powerful to create maybe something more desirable for them. There's times where you can subjugate yourself. I subjugate myself sometimes, at church, for example, when I'm playing, and it's, I play guitar at church, and it's like I'll subjugate myself to the leader of the group, the singer, the person that, for one, picks out the songs, that puts in the effort to make sure we're all on the same page. It's like, I don't need to be the center of fucking everything. It's like in that situation, it's like, well, let's, where I can fit in over here, how can I maximize what I'm doing to make a bigger contribution for the group, which will then translate to the audience. There you go. But I don't need to be the one shot calling in that situation. So there's some situations where it's a benefit to subjugate yourself and humble yourself, but at the same time, you're still using that same kind of mental energy of like, okay, well, I don't need to be in control of this. God's in control ultimately, but what can I control? Well, I can control, what I'm doing. It's like, I don't need to cause chaos. I don't need to create dysfunction in the group. There's different times and different places for these different things, but as you are getting more of a handle on your own energy levels, as you're monitoring them and being mindful of like, what's a chronic energy draining person, what's a chronic energy draining situation, all of these things where you are actually giving your energy towards an unconscious, undesirable event, because what you're worried about happening is that it's going to suck, or whatever. It's like, it's like, oh, I don't want to go to that like group thing because, I don't want to be around these people because they could be annoying and irritating. It's like, do you know that they'll be annoying and irritating? Or are you imagining like what you don't want? And then you can always feel that energy starting to get put into that manifestation, getting sucked out of you to go build that up, when you could just be doing the exact opposite of like, you know what, I'm going to get along really well with these people. It's going to be fun. It's going to be like, we're going to be like buzzing with energy by the time we get out here. It's going to be so much fucking, what is that there's like a mastery series of giving voice to the wisdom of the ages. I think that guy actually passed on to the next experience of life, but he had like all of these like Jesus, whatever, and like what the heck was the name of that? I can't even remember. I don't even know why I'm talking about this, but I think I'm actually gonna bounce. I got it's Sunday, got yard work. I need to mow my yard, and supposedly it's supposed to get cold again. I don't know. I don't really keep track of the weather, other than can I mow the yard today, or is it gonna rain or whatever? But with that being said, I think I'm gonna bounce. Appreciate you guys liking, sharing, subscribing. I appreciate you your support, your physical support, your spiritual support link in the description. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. I appreciate the kind messages that go along with a lot of those supports and everything. And I read them all, and I appreciate it. It's really heartfelt, and thank you for that. And until the next now, God bless.